So I've got my my blade, or my speaker holder here, my wiring harness here, and this is the part that I am now going to solder to these wires. But I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing first. So I'm going to check. These things only go on, they're only meant to go on one way. There. Now, here I want to point out before I go any further, this wiring harness is actually intended to be soldered onto the Nano Biscotte, like that. You probably solder on from the bottom, and you could clip it in a different type of build or install. That would be really helpful, but I'm using this for a different function, as you'll see. So I want to make sure that that goes on the way it's supposed to go on. Oh, I turned it upside down again. And here's what I want to do. That's going to snap in. I want to basically pay attention to my color-coded wires. Now in this install, I'm not going to be using the blue wires. If you wanted to install a flash-on-clash system with a power extender, or you wanted to run wires to an anti-vandal switch with an LED inside of it, you would be able to use those wires in this system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore the blue wires. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark, the middle ones are my green ones. So that one and that one are my green ones. And I'm going to get a different colored Sharpie, and I'm going to mark which one's my red one. And I'm going to get yet a different color Sharpie and mark which one is my black one, and the remaining one is obviously the white one. So now I know which wire goes to which post. Whoops, as that flies across the floor, which is another reminder of work in a clean workstation so that it's easy to find the parts that you just dropped. So here's my clip, and here's my wires. I'm only going to use green, green, red, and black. Now what I'm going to do is I want this to be fairly close to the end there, but I still want to be able to work on it. So I'm going to give myself about an inch. You might want to give yourselves 2 inch, depending. Inch is going to be tight, you know, in terms of how much room I need to actually solder this, but because I've got the helping hands, I know I can do it. So I'm going to take those wires there. I'm going to snip them off at 1 inch. What I'm going to do with all of these now is I'm going to strip about 1/8 of an inch off each one, and then I'm going to pre-tin it. And I'll show you what we do next. Alright, I'm ready to proceed. I've got my wires snipped, I've got the ends pre-tinned so they don't fray, which is nice for putting on your heat shrink. But before I put on the little bitty heat shrink that's going to cover these ends, I'm actually going to wrap them all up in this 3/32 inch shrink. And if you have too many wires, you can use the 3/16 version of this heat shrink from the Custom Saber shop. As always, these things are going to be in the description. You know what? That's a little tighter than I'd like. So I'm going to break out the one size larger. So that's why I like to order more heat shrink than I need, so that if what I expect to fit doesn't fit, I've got another option. And this, I believe, is the 3/16 shrink. And that's going to fit nicely because I don't want to push my wires in too far. And the reason I put that shrink on there is so that when this is all assembled, the wires, when I'm pushing them into the Saber, they're going to go in straight instead of bunch up where I don't want them to bunch up. It's just another little best practice. So now what I'm going to do is each of these little guys will get a sleeve of shrink. I'm going to do them one at a time. I'll show you. Okay, and here's another trick. If you've got, if you don't want to damage the shielding on your wire, pinch it in your helping hands on top of the heat shrink. It keeps the heat shrink where you want it, and it helps protect the wire. So, I know from this, now you may notice too that these pins are at a right angle. You may think, well, let's bend them straight so that the whole thing goes straight. No, actually this is going to work for us, and I'll show you why a little bit later. Again, it goes to the way we want our wires to run. It's going to work for us. Okay, so I know that's my red one. That's my red one. I'll line those up. I pre-tin my wire. Got a nice clean joint. I'll undo this side, run the shrink, and again I'm going to use the clean part of the soldering iron just to get it to shrink a little bit up so it stays where I put it. So I'm going to do all the other wires the way I showed you, where the green goes and where the black goes, and then we'll proceed. Okay, so now I have attached my wires where they go, color-coded, red, black, green, green, heat shrink, which doesn't just protect against short circuits, it actually acts as what's called a stress release. You want your wires to bend where they're insulated and braided. You don't want your wires to bend where they're soldered and attached. So now what's going to happen is when we're ready to plug in our other part, it's not just going to go straight, it's actually going to help create a curl that's going to be useful for us when we're packing our wires in. Have you ever made a mistake? Yeah, that's what I thought. Me too. My intention is to fit all these wires through there, and before I put the battery pack in and crazy glued it, I meant to file out more room in this housing around here, but I forgot to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my handy dandy Dremel, and I'm going to use a sharp tip like that. I'm going to very carefully move my wire out of the way, and I'm going to create a little bit more space in there, and then I'll show you what I mean. Now it is tricky, but possible, to keep the wire out of the way and not touch it with the tip of your Dremel. So it took me a little while, but what I've done is I've now opened up more space for the wires to run. Because what I want to do is I want to run all of these wires now into the compartment where the Nano Biscotte is going to go. So one at a time, I basically just feed the wires through, finding a spot for them to go. Now as you can see, all the wires go into that compartment. Probably could have ordered them a little bit better, but it really doesn't matter. I may go back and do that just because I'm anal. But basically, I'm not going to even use all these wires. Some of them, if you wanted to install a power extender, you probably lay that back here. We're only going to use the 4 of these wires, but it's nice to have them down the road for upgrade purposes. So I've gone ahead and taken my speaker and I've attached 6-inch blue speaker wires, soldered them like that with a dab of hot glue. That's the way I like to do my speakers. So the next thing we're going to do is insert the speaker in its position. Now you don't have to do this, but I like to do this. I use this gray putty. This is basically the same thing as a wall putty that you get at a dollar store for putting posters on your wall. It stays, putty-like, it doesn't dry. So I just take a couple of small beads of that and I put it inside where the speaker is going to go, just to reduce vibration. It's just something that I like to do. Again, you don't have to do that. So I've got my speaker and I'm ready to install it. So what I want to do is I want to run these wires in that oval section. Try to make it so you can see it here. I'm going to run these wires in that oval section here. I go to the side of the wire that's going to give me that. So get that black wire out of the way. So that's my speaker wires. Now I want to just run them through that hole. Just keep feeding them through, as you can see. Just gently pull them through. Don't want them to get twisted up like that. Until my speaker is in position. I'm going to show you a neat trick. So to drop the speaker in, what I do is I get it flat. I don't want to press on the black of the speaker. There's this nice plastic rim, sturdy plastic rim around the speaker. That's what I want to put pressure on. So what I want to do is I want to get that lined up, place that down on the table, and I want to press down until I hear it pop into place. There. It's popped into place. Now you could leave it like that. I like to make sure it goes in a little bit further. You can actually use a credit card to get the speaker to go where it needs to go. So what you do is you place it, it's already been popped in, but to pop it in even further, what I do is I put down, and then I put weight on it, and then I roll the edge over that corner. And you're going to hear the corner drop in. And what it's doing is it's moving from putting pressure on the outside of the rim, and it's putting pressure on that little plastic rim on the speaker. So I basically roll it over, do that, turn it, roll it over, do that, turn it, roll it over. And basically that's just dropping the speaker in a little further. Yep, just like that. And yeah, that speaker's in there, just the way I like it. Now comes the fun part of wiring the Nano Biscotte. Oh, but stop. There's an important step that you need to do first. Download the manual for the Nano Biscotte. go right now to plectralabs.com and go find the manual for this is the Nano Biscotte 2.0 or whatever version you're installing. Go read the manual. This is an inexpensive but really highly technical piece of equipment. And you really owe it to the designers who put a lot of work into this, or at Plectra Labs, to go read the manual to figure out how to properly use this. And what you can do is, what I do is you print off pages that show you, oh hey, look at that, it shows me where everything wires in. So you print off the pages that are useful, you read it over, you make some notes, and then we'll be ready to continue. So now that you've read the manual, the Nano Biscotte, I'm just going to sit in here kind of like that. It's going to be upside down. So we're going to make sure we attach the wires in a good way, and we think about where our wires are going to go. And I happen to know that speaker wires attach here. So what I'm going to do is the speaker wire and the negative, the black wire, well, I'm going to bunch these together. I'm going to move all this craziness out of the way for now. And I'm going to run these wires all the way around this compartment to about there, and that's where they're going to attach. So I'm going to measure those wires now. And again, if you have trouble stripping wires and you tend to get it wrong, leave yourself a little bit of extra. And I'm going to snip those off right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to strip these wires, and we're going to solder them onto the Nano Biscotte, and I'll show you how that works. And I've got my wires here now. I cut my blue for the speaker and my black for the negative to length. So I'm just going to set up my helping hands here, and one by one, I'm going to do this fairly quickly because I do this a lot. But you want to take your time with this. I pre-tinned the wires. I want to lay them across the pads. Get my solder. A little bit of pressure, a little bit of solder, and that's a good joint. Everything. And good. You have 3 good joints. Those wires are now attached. Now, I don't want to put a lot of pressure and wiggle those wires a lot, but what I'm going to show you now is how this is going to work. What you want to do is you want to run your wires with the thought in mind, if you ever have to take this apart, you want to have lots of wire to be able to work with. So those wires are going to run underneath the Nano Biscotte and around the back of these wires. Okay, I'm ready to do the tricky soldering. So this is where you become an intermediate saber builder from a novice. So remember I said we're not using the 2 blue wires and the white wire from this harness? Well, what I've done is I've snipped them and I've attached some heat shrink. So when the time comes, when we put the saber together, we're just going to tuck those in there like that. If we want to use them later, we can, but for right now, they're out of the way. Now the first tricky thing you're going to need to be able to do is recognize that one of these green wires to the switch, if you've read the manual, has to go to the same place we've attached the black wire from the battery, that pad right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to attach it on this side. If I heat it up too much, the black wire on the other side will drop off. So if you're new to soldering and you're not very comfortable with it, what you may want to do is you may want to unsolder that black pad from the other side. It's easy. Just pull it out and there it is. And you may want to attach it, twist it together with this green wire and attach them both on this side. So in order to do this, what you want to do is I've cut my wires to length so that each of them, I'm going to use a pliers to show you, each of them has enough room to curl and attach. And that gives me a little extra wire. It's safe for the wiring, and if I make a mistake, I've got a little bit of room to shorten it up again. If I was to attach it right as it comes out here, it'd be very hard to do, and if I cut the wire too short, it's almost impossible to fix without splicing wire in there. It's resting on that same pad that the black wire is attached to. And I've tinned the wire, so this should, I want to do this really quickly. So what I want to do is I want to pre-tin my tip. So you'll notice I'll touch the solder to the tip. I'm going to touch the joint, add a little solder, done. It was that quick. So now I'm just going to check and make sure that I've done a good job. So I'm going to check and make sure that the wire is attached there and that my black wire is still attached exactly where I left it. And we are good to continue. So I'm going to look on the manual and I'm going to check where each of these wires is attached, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to curl them around and solder them to that. It's going to take a little while. I'm going to take my time. You should too. Okay, now I'm going to walk you through all of this. As you can see, the first wires that I soldered are the black and the blue and the blue, and they go all the way around behind and come out here and attach here and under there. Of course, I've got these ones, which I'm not using, which are out of the way. And then the green, red, and black wire are all attached where they're supposed to go. And what I can do now is I can just carefully fold these wires. So now everything's still going to slide into the Saber hilt. They're low profile enough that they're going to fit. And in fact, they help keep the Nano Biscotte right where it's supposed to be, so that it's not going to pop out of there. Now if I want to put a couple of hot glue dabs in there to keep it where it's supposed to go, I can do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you also a way to insulate this against the inside of the Saber body for added protection. But that's basically a wired Nano Biscotte. Now you'll notice that I never put the SD card in. You never want to wire things, solder things with the SD card in. You always want to keep it removed. Now the other advantage of not hot gluing it is I can pop that out at a bit of an angle if I want to put the SD card in and out. Pop that in. So that is ready now to test. All the wires are connected. So this is the point where you want to go over and check every single connection, make sure that the red wire is supposed to be the red wire and that things aren't done backwards, because with the Nano Biscotte and with some other electronics like this, you do not want to put the battery in and have it cross polarity. You don't want to put the battery in backwards. You want to make sure that the positive is on the positive side, the negative is on the negative side. You want to make sure all your wires are run properly. So I think I'm going to get the battery out and we are ready for a test. Alright, I have plugged my wiring harness in where it goes, and I've installed the battery, but I'll show you. When you want to install the battery, obviously positive to positive, you want to lay the ribbon across, put the battery where it's supposed to go. When you drop it in, you will hear a boot sound. I'll tuck my wires in there. Now I hit the momentary switch. Saber turns on, I hear sound. I have the LED and it's flickering. I give that a shake, and it sounds like I've got the dark meat sound font in this one. So our test is successful. So that is basically the first big thing. If you've been really stressed up to this point, now you can take a break, go have yourself a cup of coffee, whatever you need to do to relax. I'm going to take the battery out. Again, pull on the ribbon to pop the battery out. I'm going to unhook my connector that I've... what I'm going to show you right now is something that I use frequently. It's from the Home Depot. Custom Saber Shop currently doesn't carry anything like this, but when and if they do, I will link to these in the video where you can get them at the Custom Saber Shop. There we go, TGT8. So this is the tubing that slides really well inside MHS parts, and it also slides over top of that. So it's a great way to provide some added protection. So I slide it on there, I'll mark it with a pen, about there. Actually, with this saber, I may want to go all the way to the switch. So I want to mark it. I'll show you what I'm doing. Mark it there. So my plastic tube's actually going to extend all the way inside the saber like that. So that's about it's a 4.5 inch. Look how easy this stuff is to cut. Whoops, it does go flying across your shop. So now I've got a nice insulation. Now you can get by without this stuff and then put your thing in. You can also make one of these out of paper. You can measure and cut a piece of paper and roll it, put a piece of tape, slide it into your hilt, and you can do it that way. This stuff is just so much more durable and better. Again, if you pop your battery in and you put it in, over time the battery casing can wear down and it could short circuit against the body of the saber. So this is a way to protect that it will never do that. So I'm going to slide my tube in there. I'm going to plug my connector together. And I put my battery in. And now what I want to do is I'm going to judge how those wires are going to fit. It folds over just like I expected. Slide it inside the hilt. You want to be careful of your wiring. Take your time. Do this. See how the wires are going to fold together. It's a pretty snug fit. So I'm going to fold some of these wires and massage them and work with them until they fit the way I want. So I've learned after a couple of test fits that I did use a dab of hot glue just to keep, I'll show you where, just to keep the wires in place where I wanted. And I've also learned that with this design, sliding the plastic tube on before you put everything in works a lot better. So I put that in. I never want to put pressure on the speaker itself, put pressure on the edge, on the rim to get it to go in. Slide in, test fit the pommel. And that's great. Exactly what I want. The last thing to do is I need to insert the speaker grill in the speaker. So here's what I've got. That's my speaker grill. It goes in the pommel. It's going to look like that. Put that on the table. Now for this, what I use a pair of needle nose pliers that I've dremeled a little bit of a notch in just so it makes it easier. And really you want to do this over a flat surface where you're not going to, and with eye protection of course. I'm going to drop that in where it's going to go. You squeeze it to compress it. It's a compression ring. Release it. It's that simple. There it is. That thread's on. You are good to go. That's your saber. Just put a blade retention screw in there. When it comes time to change your battery, the advantage of this saber, there's a couple of them. It's small. The battery pops right out because it's got some weight to it. So when it comes time to change your battery, if your saber dies, you don't have to plug it into a charger for 3 hours to get your saber back. If you're at a con or whatever, you just pop in a fresh battery and you're good to go. The other advantage of this is if you decide that you want to keep one sound card and make more than one saber, you can unplug your module. Oh, come on. I should have taken more off the clips in the very beginning of the video. Note to self. You can now go plug this into another saber that you've built the same way with maybe a different color LED. You can use your same Nano Biscotte, your same speaker in a different saber. It's a way to save money, be versatile, be modular. So there you go. That is this saber build. Again, there's 1,000 different ways to build these custom sabers with parts from the custom saber shop. But that is just one interesting way to build a basic saber with sound. So I know that was a lot, but if you take your time and do it step by step and learn as you go, you can do it. You can build yourself a basic saber with sound. Thanks again for watching.